Just don't make Jason and I sing any show tunes.
Is that going to be horrible for you?
No, it would actually be amazing. He's a substantially better singer than I am, but nonetheless.
I haven't heard you
finish.
You know what?
Thought.
You know what?
Really? No, really? Really? No, really?
But Alex Winter's joined us. We won't make you do songs with Jason.
Thank you.
But I got to mention, you know him from Bill and Ted, and you know him from The Circle. By the way, you were so friggin' good. I was yelling at my wife.
I don't think I'm allowed to talk about it because of the strike, am I? Or I don't know.
Don't promote.
No, you were.
Don't promote. Just talk about it peripherally.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
It's already come and gone, so I can't promote it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You were great. You were. I just was so proud. You were. I wanted you as my lawyer because you were very stern with the like. Yeah, all right, hit me with it. Very, very cool.
Yeah,
but I didn't realize I forgot. Your child. You were on stage with Yul Brynner.
I was.
And the King
and Sandy Duncan.
And Sandy Duncan.
Yep.
You were a Broadway child.
I was.
From what age?
Well, as Jason knows, because he was there, I moved to New York City in 1977, and I joined a management company that Jason was at.
We were both at as kids.
Yeah. And you know, it was a very active sort of environment. They were training us to sing and to sort of get our act together. So I was 12, 13. Gosh. And I'd done child acting in where I'd come from, which was St. Louis and London, and commercials and theater, a lot of theater mostly, but nothing on the level that I got parachuted into because they suddenly needed a kid on Broadway to replace a kid that was on Broadway before they took the national tour. So there was this urgent kind of like, you know, training. It was like something out of a bad martial arts movie, right? We're like, we're going to teach you Kung Fu in like 2 weeks.
This guy has to play Spider-Man in 3 weeks.
Exactly. Like, you have to like go in front of one of the toughest musical directors on Broadway and sing an entire song. And you're not a trained vocalist. So I was a trained actor at that age, but not a trained vocalist. So they like boot camped me into singing, and I went.
Did you enjoy it? Do you remember?
Oh, absolutely. I still train. I love it. I love it so much.
Did you love Broadway? I always say to Jason,
I will also tell you, because I mean, he's a very handsome man. This guy, I will tell you, as a fairly heterosexual man, adorable child. I mean, with curly blonde hair and just like one of those little cherub-looking kids.
You're the Marjorie Gortner of.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
So, and sorry for that reference. Look it up. It always fascinates me, Broadway. I know this man so well. We've been best friends for 30-some years, but it still kills me that it's so judgmental, it's so difficult, and it's so repetitive.
Right.
That if you don't like it, or if you're going through a bad time, you still got to do a matinee and a regular show.
No, I did 8 shows a week. I did King and I on Broadway for a bit, then on the road. It was about a year all told, including at the Pantages. Then I went back and pretty much immediately went into Peter Pan with Sandy Duncan and did that for almost 3 years. So that was all of high school, 8 shows a week. You know this, Animal.
Were you Michael or John?
I was John.
Uh-huh.
John
How did you have a life? What was your life?
Well, it was funny. I was talking about someone about this earlier who went to professional children's school, which is where all my friends went. And my family was like, we're not putting you in that place because you're just going to become like a maniac. Yeah. So I went to a public high school in New Jersey, and I took the bus in every day, and they let me out early on Wednesday. So I had this weird bifurcated life where I had all my normal friends, all my normal kind of suburban life, and then I had this crazy Broadway
You went to school, got out early.
Yeah.
Took public transportation.
Took a bus into the Port Authority.
And then did the show.
And then went and did the show and then got back on the bus and went home. And I did my homework
and
on
you
the
know,
bus.
here's what's crazy.
What time did you get home?
11:30 or so.
And you know, nowadays,
oh my God,
I don't even think they would allow a child actor to do that anymore. Like when Matilda on Broadway, there were 4 Matildas, and they all went on every week.
Yeah.
They would never let a child
on a bus.
do that.
How old were you coming home?
I was in Times Square working on 46th Street from 1970. I was in Times Square from 78 to 83, I guess. You know.
So you were what, about 16, 15?
I was 13 to 17.
Yeah, right.
And doing your homework.
Doing homework on the bus and hanging out at night and going to shows with the other cast members and but
kids are spitting out spitballs to each other, and you're going, I had a really tough night last night. Women in the third row. I mean, did you have an adult experience at night?
Oh, I did. Yeah, very much so. Oh, my God. I made a documentary about showbiz kids for HBO.
Yeah.
It ain't pretty, is it?
I'm lucky. We're all lucky.
I am always, I've worked with enough kids now as an adult.
Yeah.
And I always wonder what the experience is for them.
Yeah.
I think the kids that I've worked with have actually had
Decent
really
experiences.
good lives and
Yeah.
good experiences.
Yeah.
But I know that's
It can
not
go
the
a
norm.
number of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, Alex, when I look at you, you're a lot older than you appear in the sense of what you've done and what you've been put through and
Sure.
adapted to.
Yeah.
Because most kids have a hard time just doing their homework or taking public transportation.
Yeah, it's an adultified world. I mean, in every conceivable way. And the thing about it, though, is yes, it's hard work. But as Jason, as you know from having done so much theater, I remember the very first day I went to rehearse because Yul Brynner basically ran King and I. He didn't take a director's credit, but he directed the whole show. He did the audition, he did everything. And because the show was already running on Broadway, he had to rehearse me while the show, the only way to get me adapted to the stage was to rehearse me while the show was going on. So there'd be a scrim and certain scenes would happen in front of a scrim. So for those like 10 minutes, I had to work on the set. And so there was on this giant Broadway, it was the Gershwin, right? The Urus, on this giant Broadway stage by myself in the dark. And because of the way a scrim works, as you know, they can't, it's like a two-way mirror. They can't see through it, but I can see them.
Right.
So there's like freaking 1,800 people and Yul Brynner with a spotlight on him singing his song.
Yeah.
And here I am 13 years old, like fresh off the bus from St. Louis. And I was like, I never want to do anything else. Like,
my
this is
God.
paradise.
It is. It's
You know,
magical.
it's like,
It is.
I mean, so I was so happy in that environment that it made all of the stressors worthwhile.
And the juice that you got as a 13-year-old, was the applause, was the crowd, was the...
It was amazing. I mean,
energy?
Brynner wouldn't stop. Now they do it with every show, which is a bit much, but Brynner wouldn't let people go home till they gave him a standing ovation. So the curtain call every night was a standing ovation because he literally wouldn't let them leave. Now, pretty much every show you go to, everyone gets on their feet, which
Yeah,
is kind of
that's
you know. But so it was spectacular. I mean, it was very much his show. And Constance Towers, who was Anna, it was Lewis. I did my thing, whatever. I wasn't starring in it.
Yeah. What a fascinating start.
Yeah.
And now we'll leap ahead. We'll get back to Bill and Ted later and all the other stuff. But I watched the Really No Really was, we're all dealing with these algorithms. We're all dealing with the three companies.
Right.
That are running social media.
Yeah.
And you pointed
all
out,
of technology, I would say, but yeah.
all of technology.
Yeah.
And you pointed out two of them and showed that there's no silo between them.
That's right.
It's the YouTube and Google.
Yeah.
And you had access to the CEO. You had access to the guy who started, which was, that made me laugh out. People don't realize that the big social media platforms are all porn adjacent.
That's right.
They
yes.
all started, explain if they haven't seen the documentary, don't know how.
Basically, every technical innovation scales because of pornography. That's kind of a well-known thing in technology.
Really?
Yeah. I know that's shocking, right? But including PayPal, which the only reason PayPal took off was because people were using it for porn transactions. And
Are you?
that is
Come on.
Wait,
it's a
it gets
straight
better.
up
It gets
straight up
better.
fact.
Gets better.
If you look at in the Social Network, they in the film they talk about how that started as basically
A way to rank girls.
exactly,
Okay.
which, and you know what that was about. And then
you
YouTube
go.
started with a kind of a service called Hot or Not, where they were like, okay, finally we have the most robust technology to get video online, which no one had ever figured out before. We're going to use it to cure cancer. Like, are we gonna allow like old people to see their young family before they pass? No, we're not going to do any of those things. We're going to create Hot or Not, so you can rank how hot or not hot someone is based on their video.
And by the way, the money came from
There's
PayPal.
no
which,
hope for humanity.
the money
I just
came
gotta
from
say.
PayPal, which was porn related. And the two guys who started it sold it within a year and a half
Yeah, the three guys
to Google for
1.6 billion. 1.6 billion in 2005, which is like trillions in today's money. It was crazy. It was unprecedented.
So that was the intent of this, was that innocent. It was rating. It was to rate people. And then it grew.
It did, but to be fair to the founders, one of whom Steve Chen is in the film, they saw its potential beyond Hot or Not immediately and began to. It wasn't Hot or Not when Google bought it.
Right.
By
No,
then,
right.
yeah. By then they realized that no, this is actually a service that is going to change the world in certain ways in terms of what. I mean, we all know this if we work in media, that there's so much power to the visual image, right? And a moving visual image. And in 2005, as recent as that is, it was really hard to move video around online. It was almost impossible. And like people had been doing it since the 90s, but it was hard. And suddenly this thing comes along where there's just like, I can upload my cat, I can upload my daughter taking her first steps, and it blew people's minds. And it scaled immediately. Like within the first year of YouTube buying it, and everybody made fun of Google.
By the way,
buying.
I saw that what's his name from Shark Tank? Mark Cuban said this is one of the dumbest investments.
But everybody did. Susan caught so much flack for being so bullish about wanting to acquire this company.
Susan's the CEO.
Susan Wojcicki,
whose garage they started.
They started Google, and very, very bright lady from a very bright family, full stop. But she really did have the vision early on that a lot of other people lacked. And it's hard to quantify how big this thing is, which is why people don't talk about it very often, right? They think about it as a social media platform, which it really isn't. It's all of humans' recorded history in one place, which you can't find anywhere else, right? It's obviously influencers, and it's DIY, and there's a social media component, and it's all of those things, but it's also all of our media, all of our music, all of our entertainment, all of our news, and all of our search for a certain demographic. That's all under one.
I was shocked
roof.
Because it is used. This is where I have never used it, but I guess a lot of people do. I do use social media to get some news sources, but I've never thought to go to YouTube.
That's right.
Is that really a big component of it?
I've got 3 boys. My eldest is about to turn 25. They're all like super balanced, great kids. None of them got rabbit holed or red pilled or any of those things.
Yeah.
But they live on YouTube. And they don't really use anything else.
So did my son, 27.
Yeah.
And when we watched this together, that's what curates his news. It's such
and probably his music and
everything,
his film and everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
When I say TV or streaming, he goes, "What?" It's all there.
Yeah. I mean, Jason, they're going to know you by watching either all of your stuff or clips of your stuff on YouTube.
And what is my residual payment for that?
I would say that's somewhere between 0 and 0.
That abides with what I
yes, which is why we're striking right now. Because if all the other companies could have that model, they would absolutely.
You bet they would.
Yeah,
right. Use forever. Just use that and put it up forever.
Exactly.
Now, it's amazing to me because the goodness of it. And that's why I wanted to have you in too. You didn't demonize it. You didn't say it was evil and the enemy, which is hard to say when my son is learning guitar solos, when people are hooking up with rare diseases to talk to each other, when your information is endless that you can get, the good of it.
Yeah.
The negative is nobody really understands the algorithm, but we do know, or it's implied, that outrage is entertainment.
Right.
So instead of getting clicks, by the way, we get so much information thrown to us now.
Yeah.
Because all of the newspapers, anybody, print or streaming, has to get eyeballs. And the way they get eyeballs is clickbait. And they put headlines in to grab.
Sure.
This is not clickbait. This is get you in and keep you in.
That's right.
So
that's
what is, and that's what I want to talk to you about, the algorithm that accelerates what you're watching. Mm-hmm. And I saw the interviews with quite a few people on your documentary, that takes them down rabbit holes that are quite dangerous. Mm-hmm. And they go to on-ramps, as you point out, which are innocuous. I think you pointed out self-help or whatever, mental health, which can end up taking you to some really dangerous places. And Jason, it's interesting because there's a naivety about can't you control how that happens? Can't you resist having that happen?
Yeah, what's interesting and what we get into in the film is that we're now kind of even past an algorithm/rabbit hole era where YouTube, unlike any of these other platforms, is once you get pulled in, you're not just watching a 5-second or 30-second or 2-minute little video clip. You're connecting with an individual who has a channel that probably has a lot of money behind it and an enormous amount of viewers that's talking to you for an hour, right? And because of the way YouTube works, it's like that person is looking in their webcam, so there's the connection between you and that influencer or that person on that channel is extremely powerful, right? Much more powerful than an anchor on TV who's sort of vaguely talking to the fourth wall, myriad cameras, but you're sitting at home and you don't feel like you have any kind of personal connection to that person. And I think that what YouTube didn't even see coming, that I think still not talked about enough in the news, is that this is more of like a parasocial issue than an algorithmic issue, meaning these people feel they have a deep bond, like a personal, intimate bond with the person on the other end of that webcam who they really don't know at all. And so that has led to a lot of dangerous propaganda and people being incited to violence and all kinds of stuff sure, you can get into party politics, but this is a human nature issue because everyone responds to outrage no matter what the outrage is, but it's also being monetized by this company, by any of these companies, because they are ad-based. So the more they keep you on platform, the longer they've got you on these channels watching whatever show is like pulling in and they've got ads attached to it, then the more money they make. And that's where you end up with a problem. So I've been arguing for a while, which other people have too, that this is no different than what like Pulitzer and Hearst did, right? With their newspapers back in the late 1800s. This is like grab people with the most salacious stuff you can and then monetize it. But when you're dealing with 4.6 billion views a day, which is what YouTube gets, which is way beyond anything else on the planet, including every media conglomerate and every TV channel and every social media platform, and you're monetizing that kind of traffic, that's where dangers lurk, as well as so many positives.
Well, and by the way, they're not going for the end user; they're going for the shareholder.
Right, exactly.
That's who they obey to. Exactly.
Yeah.
But I'm fascinated by the ad component and the ad revenue component because, again, I'm apparently using YouTube in a very pedestrian way, but I have never paid attention to an ad on YouTube.
Yeah.
I can't, if they give me the 5-second thing, I'm counting it down as fast as I can go. There are some you can't get rid of.
Yeah.
But I have never swayed to a product or a thing as sold to me by YouTube. I can't believe that people are spending money to advertise on it. Is it effective?
It is massive. When you look at the numbers, and look, when you make a doc, you don't go in knowing everything. You go in knowing generally what something is about, maybe with a specific understanding of the landscape. But every week on this thing, as I was working, the numbers just kept blowing my mind. I mean, the ad revenue, and to be fair, look, during COVID, everyone was stuck on YouTube, so they made more than most countries' GDPs.
Do you know the number? Do you know the numbers?
I mean, it's in our movie. I think it's
$326 billion.
Hundreds of
billions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Google is worth in the trillions, but yes, we're dealing with billions as far as YouTube is concerned, and I think it's hundreds of millions per annum. But you're dealing with an enormous amount of eyeballs on content. So if you're an advertiser, it absolutely matters to you. Like if someone is seeing, forget TV advertising, forget the Super Bowl. It's like the Super Bowl all day, every day is how they look at it. So yes, other thing to remember is that, I encounter this a lot of times, people saying, well, I don't do anything on YouTube other than like figure out how to put a AAA battery into my remote or, want to learn a song or something. But everyone is doing that all day, and they're doing it all over the world. It's not relegated to our country or just North America. So the entire planet is glued. The number one most viewed website in the world is Google. The number two most viewed website in the planet is YouTube. There are more people watching YouTube than anything else on the planet. And Google's mostly text, right? So there's more eyeballs on this thing than anything else. So for advertisers, it matters.
To give Jason a sense to people listening, one of the moments that blew me away, and we were trying to find this kid, but you got the kid, and I'm talking about the
Ryan.
Mm-hmm. Talk about Ryan's little business on YouTube.
That family's side hustle is they had a kid who started on YouTube at 3. He's now 9. Amazing kid, and to be fair, really amazing parents. He's super lucky because his parents are really smart. They must be making between $150 to $200 million a year. Going on and saying, hey, this started when he was 3, right? Like, hey, I'm going to look at this new toy I got. Come look at it with me. And so then people started watching him playing with toys. Toy manufacturers kind of perked up and went, oh, let's get him to play with our toys. So, okay, well, that's going to cost you. And then advertisers perked up and said, oh, this is a great place for us to advertise because he's getting hundreds of millions of views on these videos. And next thing you know, it's an industry. I mean, it's a formidable industry.
This kid is a rock star.
Yeah, it's huge. These are huge numbers.
But also, you pointed out, interestingly, that it was an easy loophole for other people to start monetizing on children's programming on YouTube. And they were putting horrible stuff up.
There was a period.
Stuff.
Yeah, there was a period, and to be fair to YouTube, they shut it down, YouTube Kids. But there was a period when people were gaming the algorithm and putting incredibly
horrific,
volatile, violent content into the kids' programming. And we talk about it in the movie. I think the issue right now that is significant there with the kids is, and we talk about this generally, is that, we were talking about us being on, in the business young.
Yeah.
And at least we had like the Coogan Act, and we had, and now I think you have quite a few safeguards. I do a lot of stuff directing with kids too. And there's like not just a tutor, but there's like a kind of almost a social services type, not an intimacy coordinator, but there's someone there making sure
social service.
Taking care of the kids properly. And none of those safeguards exist in YouTube. So you have all of these kid influencers, and and they're just like, hey, just upload the content, and they're doing deals with them. So it's a little duplicitous because YouTube is involved to a degree, right? But there's no standards and practices. There's no safeguards. There's no laws. There's no regulation. It's just the Wild West. So you just got to hope everybody's parents is great, which, as you and I both know, is not what's going to happen with every kid who's making $5 to $150 million a year.
What would be the incentive to put inappropriate material into the kids' channel? Is it just for the thrill of being able to do it?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. The way the internet functions, especially. What YouTube is interesting in that it's has so many eyes on it, and yet it has a social media component to the degree that if you go into the comments section, that's where everybody hangs out.
Right.
So if you think about the internet, you think about what's going on Twitter and sort of other areas, and there's been a lot of stuff written about this, so sort of the kind of troll world. And this can get political because people can troll for political reasons, right? But a lot of that is really just anarchistic. It's just let's blow it up because we can. It's like the sort of like an almost a terrorist version of just like, calling your local bowling alley and asking if they've got 10-pound ball. Right? But now you're doing that with an audience of 4.5 billion and not just you and three friends on every phone line in your house. So I think there was a multitude of reasons why to do that, but also there's a lot of pranking that has led to suicides and things like that. So it can get pretty serious. You're dealing with children's mental health and things like that.
So when you do this, Alex, it's a responsibility. Doing this is a responsibility. Doing anything you put out that people are watching, responsibility. When I watched that, and you were really good, and you took us through the history, you got the major players, but I also wonder, coming away, do you go, did I vet correctly? Was I taken anywhere? Did I get misrepresented too? How do you know how to navigate something that's so new, that's so massive, that's changing every day, that you got it right?
Sure.
And that you're getting the message right?
Sure. Look, I've been making these for a while, so I have a small production company. We have extremely good lawyers, I would say. We have the best kind of copyright and libel rights lawyers that there are. You have to. And we spend a great deal of time in that world. We've made quite a few documentaries that deal with very touchy subjects where we could be in serious trouble. Or, I did one that involved someone who got killed during the making of it, involved journalism and some pretty intense things going on. We've never had an issue, but we are extremely diligent. And the movies take time to make, and a large part of that process is just constantly sending things out to legal experts and to other journalists and vetting them and vetting over and over and over again. In terms of the message, at the end of the day, that's subjective to a degree, right? And we were talking about this offline before we started. I don't kind of make gotcha movies, so I'm not looking to really pull someone in and then bamboozle them, which, people do that. And I guess there's a place for it. But so I'm very upfront with all of my subjects. I sort of tell them, like, this is where we're going. This is what we're doing. These are, for some people, it's actually helpful for me to get them questions in advance because, like, if this is wrong, let me know, right? Or in the case of sort of Susan, I may say something to her that she just flat out disagrees with, and that's good. That's human, right? And she'll say that on camera, like, well, I actually disagree with that criticism. And then I go to the other person and say, well, that's a crock of shit. What do you think? And then they have to rebut that. So that's kind of part of the process too, that it's not like we're not the voice of God. We're talking to people who may disagree with each other. And there isn't kind of a presentation that we are the end all.
Well, that's why I appreciated it. That you weren't coming out and saying, I'm going to present it. Here's the whole deal. Now you decide where we go. But my takeaway from you, and tell me if I get this right, was, and I think I got it right, was you said this generation's not going to fix it, the ones there now, because you got basically Congress, you got 82-year-old guys with the clock blinking red on their VCR still. They're not the ones going to solve it. The next generation's going to solve it. But, so you said 10, 15 years away, but on the 25th of August in Europe, they just passed legislation, or they're starting to pass legislation to try and control this and social media and these platforms. So what do you think about that?
Look, I don't want to drag us into a kind of a thorny, complicated area. I've been during the strike. I've been very involved with pulling people together with AI experts and other people to try to help them understand this area because it's extremely complicated. I would only say that I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the AI and internet regulation that's going on in Europe at the moment. I think they're getting a lot wrong. I think especially in the kids space, there's been a lot written about it. There's a lot of kids legislation that's being pushed right now here in the U.S. that's being sort of copied from the legislation in the EU, which I think is not great legislation. I'm not by any means alone that you literally Google these things and you'll see a lot of criticism. And the reason for that is that there's an understandable fear of these new technologies that have got everybody's kids on them all the time that isn't matched with an understanding of those technologies by many people, especially of our generation and older. So they're just like, well, we got to do something. And they grab the biggest mallet they can find and they start whacking at it really hard. And we saw that happen with Napster and the mess that happened after that has in many ways led to the streaming crisis that's now got us on strike. I think that new generations that are coming up that understand these technologies better, but also understand the risks. If you, for example, and I won't bore everybody with what's going on with this legislation, but part of what's wrong with it is they're fighting really hard for ID verification. That can be really bad, especially for kids. Right? You don't want to have your ID being fed into the internet where all kinds of bad actors can get access to it. And that has led to a lot of really terrible things happening to either children or LGBTQ, other marginalized groups who use the internet in a more anonymous way and need to remain anonymous. It's very, very important. They're also looking to break encryption, especially in the EU. Very bad idea that will unprotect a lot of people who need to stay protected. So I'm sort of more in favor of kind of more nuanced ways forward that will take longer to get to, but will we won't break the internet, and it will keep more people protected.
I'm going to go in a slightly different direction for a minute, but I'm going to start this way. Based on just what you said, I have always believed and advocated for the idea that one of the reasons that the internet can be such a cesspool is because of anonymity. Just Twitter, X.
Yes.
I'm verified. It took a lot to get verified.
Yeah.
As long as it's coming from my account and I haven't been hacked, if it's on there, I said it.
Yeah.
And I'm accountable for it. I have a feeling there'd be a lot less trolling, a lot less mis and disinformation if it wasn't anonymous. If you had to stand behind the things you put out into the marketplace, that accountability would be a very big factor in cleaning some of this mess up. Now, what you're proposing is that there are vulnerable people who rely on anonymity.
Yep.
But do you really feel that the scale tips to that side rather than the one I'm describing?
I think that the issue is more technological, meaning it's not as easy to get to the place that you just described as one would hope. That's all I'm saying. It's different for celebrities to verify because there's only one of you. Right. Sure. And there's only one of most of the people who, that was the problem with what Musk did when Twitter was purchased by him, was he suddenly allowed everyone to verify by throwing some money at it.
Right.
And suddenly you had copycat accounts. And that's sort of my point. It kind of proved the point that it's very difficult to moderate content. It's very difficult to properly verify people. Really good, even not so good hackers will get around that and create fake accounts that look verified in 2 seconds. So the internet will always be awash in some degree of the nastiest people that we're most worried about are not going to get thwarted by verification requirements, right? They're going to end run them. And they're going to have a little AI photo that looks like a real human being with a name that probably has a driver's license. And they'll be whoever. There'll be some guy in Macedonia in a hacker farm, right? So it's much harder to get there. That's the point. Now, it's not to say we won't. It's not to say we shouldn't be fighting for it. Not to say that there isn't all kinds of good stuff in the AI bill and some of the other stuff at the EU. It just means we've got to be a little bit more nuanced with it. So it's not an either or. It's not to say, oh, we can't ever do it. Right. We shouldn't do anything. Like, oh God, I don't feel that way at all. I feel like I'm super pro regulation, and there's a lot of people who don't like that. They want no regulation, no breaks. But I think we have to. We have to have regulation standards and practices. We have to have guardrails. We have to.
But we got to, like you said, we got to thread the needle really carefully.
We do, yeah,
and to a really good point.
Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to ask you, it's a little bit off the topic, but I'm fascinated because I know you for so long. Seemingly you were on a very different path when I met you. You were a kid who seemed to have a singular passion. That passion had become demonstrably rewarding and positive. Your career as an actor and even as a director was clicking and working beautifully. And then you pulled back. You went away.
Yep.
And when you came back much more in the guise of a director and producer, and particularly kind of in this area, this arena. So I'm fascinated, if you care to talk about it at all, because I'm fascinated by people that create different second acts and third acts for themselves. What was it that said, I gotta pull away from this for a while? And how did you find this other light to be guided by and go, I'm going that way?
They're oddly connected, and it took me a minute to figure that out, because life is life. It's happening to you, right? So it's not like, unlike George Lucas claiming he constructed all of Star Wars in advance, which nobody believes. It just happens, and you figure out retrospectively why what happened. When I was doing the Showbiz Kids doc for HBO, what struck me, because my whole process with that was to get someone from 100-year-old, like the first silent movie child star, all the way up to like the big Instagram kid of today, and then everyone in between age-wise, into one conversation and see what the similarities were. And what blew my mind in a lot of the other subjects that I spoke to was that everyone had the exact same story. It didn't matter whether it was baby Peggy, who was 102, or, a kid who was like on a Disney show with 20 million Instagram followers. Everyone had the same trajectory. It was really bizarre. I guess if you're a behavioral psychologist, maybe it wouldn't be to you. You'd be like, oh, that's because blah, blah, blah happens to your brain, right? But all of us had started really young, had a certain amount of success, meaning we were doing it all the time and pulled out of normal school, pulled out of normal life. Mm-hmm. Every one of us had bailed on the industry in our 20s and had taken a break and had come back later. And I sat with every pro, I was like, oh, you did that, and you did that, and baby Peg did it, like, and everyone, she like went away, I can't do this anymore, came back, and then a lot of people came back and just started doing it again, right? Like Henry Thomas is a good example. Yeah. Or Mara Wilson, or a bunch of people we can think of. And I was listening to them going, well, that's what I did. And I thought, well, why did I do that? And I mean, I knew at the time, around the time Bill and Ted 2 was done, I'd been acting every day since I was 9 years old, and I was exhausted, like just emotionally. And I'd gone to film school and I had other interests, but I was so on the treadmill. I had the agents, I had the manager, I had the public, I had all this stuff. I was 24, maybe 25. Like my eldest son now is about to turn 25. I'm like, oh my God, he's a baby. I was like at the end of a career already,
right, wow.
And I think I just needed regular life. Right? I just, like, developmentally, I left LA. Politely, I got rid of my acting agents. Like, I'm not doing this. I'm not going on auditions. And I moved to New York and I started a production company in the UK because I have a British passport. And I was just a regular guy. I eventually started a family and I just lived like a normal human being with none of that pressure.
More or less just from burnout.
Yeah, I think I was just fried. I think that, and it was the early 90s, and I had acting friends around me who were really, like, some died. Like, it was it was a tough era, early 90s for a lot. It was like 80s, like, flamed a lot of people out, as we all know. So I saw that happening around me, and I just thought, I don't feel like if I stick around, I'm going to be in the best place. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of a sort of a survival instinct. And then what's interesting is that around in the back end of the 80s, when I had all this attention on me, like from my perspective, I wasn't some giant star or anything, but I was not an anonymous person.
Sure.
Right.
I found the internet. pre-web, like the internet, which was in those days quite crude, like the BBS Usenet era, where you would have an anonymous username. You would find these groups of like-minded people. Will Wheaton talks about this very eloquently because he's even more tech savvy than I am. And he did the same thing. He got the hell out of the business and kind of dove into tech. And I just felt very comfortable there. And I could communicate. I made friends, would communicate. Like eventually you knew who each other was. There was trust and you would de-anonymize or whatever. And that was my interest in the birth of online communities because I got so much out of those communities. And there was even some form of online, for those of us who had any issues like with abuse or stuff like back in the childhood, like there was a lot of anonymous online abuse communities, almost like not group therapy, but you could just go and talk about anything. It was very free, very open. So it was an extremely liberating environment. And then I just kind of stayed with that as I re-entered and I sort of had my time away. And as I was saying to you earlier, I started training again years ago. I started working with really good acting trainers, good vocal trainers, and kind of started to make my way back into the business again. But it was a while.
So how many years were you away?
I mean, I kept working. I made another movie in like the late 90s. I was writing and directing and I was still,
You had a deal. You got to tell it. When you did Freaks.
Exactly. It was after Freak that I left though. So that was my last. I didn't act between Freaked and Bill and Ted 3 almost at all professionally. And I didn't audition. I wasn't part of any circuit.
When they came to you for Bill and Ted 3.
Well, they didn't.
Oh.
Yeah, it didn't work that way.
Okay.
So, these are all like my closest friends. We started working together in our 20s. Keanu's like one of my closest friends, the two writers, Chris and Ed. So we were hanging out all the time anyway. And a dozen years before we made the movie, we decided to make a third and started the very slow, laborious process of getting a script and trying to find financing. And so it was self-generated by the four of us.
Now, Keanu and you said best friends. Is he the nicest guy in every story? In a town that wants to tear everybody down, anytime I see his picture, I know that underneath it is going to be that he donated bone marrow to a child.
Yeah. Can you imagine how scary it is to be that person though, where the media has decided
you're the guy
this is who you are.
Literally walk on water,
right?
And you're just a guy,
right?
Because who isn't just a person?
And one day you flip a guy off.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden
it's like in the world of iPhones, like
so does Keanu come out of his apartment with cash going? Gotta give somebody money today. I better have it on me.
He doesn't, thankfully, but like I love him to death. I've known him a really long time, but I'm just like
you're right.
I'm like one day he's
waiting
like,
for the fall.
I know.
Finally, the picture of him going. You know
Exactly,
what? I've had it with you. Oh my God, the fall.
It's
of
like a face in the crowd or something.
Oh wow, one of my favorite movies ever made. Well, the movie was wonderful.
Thank you.
I mean, really wonderful in that it wasn't judgmental. It was really smart. And again, I love when somebody narrates a story and lets you go for the ride, and then goes, "All right, I gave you all I got.
Yeah,
you
figure it out.
decide." Yeah. I got to know the woman Susan who left. Is she worth $1.5 billion? She left the company since.
Yeah, but
since
she
the
was one of the chief financial components of the beginning of Google.
So what's she going to do? What does she do now?
Whatever she wants.
Right? He's quicker than I am. That's what is she going to do now?
I didn't mean in that way. What speaks to her?
She's going to put a small percentage in an investment.
Shooting them. They all want to go to Mars. Everybody
and let it grow and blossom.
I just want to tell everybody here, all the guys with money,
you want to give her your birthday?
They're all
so
planning on going to Mars.
There's
something going on there.
Exactly.
We should know that it's time to check another planet.
Keep a close eye on where these people are going.
I just saw too that a lot of these Silicon bigwigs are investing in a town, this utopian town that they want to build.
Yeah.
For longevity.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, we'll probably all be digging dishes there at some point.
I would happily dig dishes for whatever they'd pay me for.
Yeah.
Anything that we didn't get that after the fact you took away from this, where you went, you know what? Now that I've gotten away from this, I did the movie. I've sat and watched the movie 8 million times.
I didn't pull my kids off YouTube. I mean, I think that COVID showed us there was a lot of kind of animus towards the growth of online communities, which again, I know there's a lot of bad things that go on. And to Jason's point, I've been trolled. It's horrible, right? I've been swarmed. I got Twitter swarmed by like a bunch of neo-Nazis on Twitter once. It was pretty bleak, but so I'm well aware of the pitfalls. But I generally have found that that most kids are okay, and that there's a lot of studies now that are showing it's a pretty neutral response, actually, their participation on social media, not necessarily a given negative response. So I think that there's a lot of benefit to being able to connect with your fellow human, this parasocial thing I was talking about, that isn't a negative, right?
Exactly.
So, and that's all just going to get more advanced, and and the ability for someone in a micronation somewhere to know what's going on and be connected to the world. I mean, I think it's an enormous good. And
well, I'll tell you the other thing about YouTube that I've spoken to, and I think it's correct to a certain degree. Apropos of our strike right now, one of the things that just makes me crazy is I believe that the studios, the streamers, the guys who feel they're pretty much at the top of the food chain, that the attitude reflected towards the creative artists are, we don't need you.
Yeah,
we can have an AI write a script, we can generate an actor, we can and I sit there and go, guys, we don't need you.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, if I can sit in my basement and replicate any cinematic shot ever done with an actor that I create that I generate and a script that a machine writes for me, is if I can assemble something half decent, I've got YouTube, I've got global distribution. Yeah. If it gets eyeballs, I'm going to make money off it. We don't need you. Absolutely. When I talk to acting students, I always say, you have no excuse to not have a career.
Yeah.
Because you've got a global audience. It doesn't mean you're going to get paid.
Yeah.
But you have distribution. And
you have that, and YouTube provides you with study. Like, my God, like the lengths I had to go to learn things, sort of to see like some great actor talking about their craft, or a movie that like you couldn't watch most movies when you were our age in those days.
As a
like
kid,
it was impossible.
Well, you know what? What I find
now it's all there.
It seems like all of a sudden, this is on my YouTube feed.
Yeah.
Guys who bootleg Broadway shows, and they don't do it for money.
No, yeah.
But they put it on YouTube. And so performances that I've missed, I go, this is the whole show. This is fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So, by the way, to that point, you said what was on my landing. Go to YouTube,
right?
And what comes up on yours? And
well,
I said,
can tell you
hope
what's
the
on
porn
mine.
didn't come up big time, but. So what's on yours? What's on your?
Well, okay. So if you go to my YouTube homepage, because I was going, when I was hearing about going down rabbit holes, I'm going. Nobody's giving me this.
Yeah.
Here's what comes up if I go to my homepage. Fail Army, because I like watching people screw up.
Yeah.
I'm a ceramicist, so I have a lot of how to make potteries.
Yeah.
I have Judge Judy clips. I have Broadway-based content. I have all kinds of bloopers. America's Got Talent highlights. Behind the scenes of movie making. UFO and supernatural investigations. Stand-up comedians. And our stupid podcast. That's what comes up on my homepage.
Mine has David Gilmour doing his barn music that he's playing. Yep. Let's see here. NFL Sunday Ticket, I don't know why. Joe Rogan talks to Hulk Hogan, who was about his firing from the WWF. Martin Short says that, what's his name? Conan O'Brien. Conan O'Brien looks like freeze-dried Prince Harry.
Right.
William Friedkin talks about how he really feels about Al Pacino.
That's a good one. I actually watched that one.
See this kind of stuff. So I was surprised to see the variety on mine, and I got to tell you,
but there was nothing there that I went. There's nothing.
You don't get rabbit hole. I mean, you don't really get rabbit hole anymore. To be fair to YouTube, they fixed the recommender algorithm several years ago. It's really difficult to go on there.
I scrolled for a while, and I went. There is nothing here that looks overtly political to me or agenda-y to me.
I don't get that kind of content either.
And I never do.
Yeah, but you have to be looking for that kind of stuff.
I think you have to open. You have to open the box.
You do.
Yeah.
I do have how to cover a hickey, and I don't understand. I don't understand that one.
Yeah. Mine is like dad rock and Broadway musicals. And,
I love that you love the Gilmores, all the musical stuff.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah.
Like you said, I can watch any performance of any artist that ever recorded.
Yeah.
And my kid can learn every solo that any guitarist ever played. It's just
and every terrible TV commercial I was in when I was 9 years old. And I mean, it's all. I mean, the stuff we did on Broadway is there that no one recorded.
I'll tell you what changed the world for me. And if had it existed when I was a kid, I don't think we'd be talking right now because I would have a very different career, and no doubt you would never have heard of me. But I wanted to be a magician.
Oh, that's right.
And as a kid, the only way you could learn a trick was either a guy shows you how to do it, but mostly it was out of books. And when it was sleight of hand stuff, even the best written book, you're going, I don't know what the hell he's talking about.
Yeah.
There are more tutorials on how to do complex tricks.
To that point, I still can't do a frickin' trick that has that thread, that's invisible thread to make the card rise and stuff.
Well, that's
I can't
not-
even pull the thread apart
That's
to
not
get it
easy.
set up.
It's actually not easy.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
No, did you do magic too? Were you
I did. I was a
Yeah,
magic
figured.
fanatic.
All
Yeah, I
these-
used to
all
hang
these
out at
guys-
Tannen's
I
Magic.
learned
Tannen's
how to-
Magic
I went to
thing. There you go.
I went to magic camp.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
Oh,
and that's
amazing.
actually where I realized
Yeah.
this is
This is
no
not-
good.
yeah, exactly,
Because
yeah.
I saw what kids were doing that were
Yeah.
my age, and I went, yeah, I'm
Anybody
so
else,
far
by the
behind
way?
the curve.
Anybody
me too.
became famous so you went to magic camp?
I couldn't tell you. I wasn't there long enough. If you did the whole thing, it was 2 weeks. I was there for 4 days, and I went, oh,
Yeah.
I suck.
Yeah, this is
I
above my
suck.
pay grade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Magic camp. Did you have a puppet too? Did you do ventriloquism?
No, I was really into magic though, close-up magic, card and coin stuff, and I lived out of the magic shop on Broadway.
Tannen's. Well, if you're in New York, Tannen's was the
Tannen's was the
It was
that
the
was
place.
the
All right,
bomb,
let's
yeah.
let's go. Thank you for
Yeah.
coming in. By
Thank
the way,
you.
Allison, by the way,
Yeah.
I'm not just saying it. Really good documentary.
Thank you so much. I
That's
appreciate it.
smart. We're on there all the time.
By the way, if we want to see the YouTube effect, where is it
It's
currently?
kind of
available?
everywhere now. It's
Is it
it's on-
Netflix? Is
it's,
it all
it's
that stuff?
Amazon, Apple, YouTube.
Yep.
It's
which is kind of
DirecTV.
And what's the? Can you do you mind? Are you working on something currently?
The strike is, I'm very
Right.
busy with strike stuff, with raising money for crew, and we're doing all kinds of stuff,
Right.
coalitions and
But
things
do you have
like
something
that.
in your head to go?
But
next?
yes, I'm developing a couple of other big docs.
Documentaries,
Yeah,
yeah.
and a feature, and I did some acting that I'm not allowed to talk about that's coming out next
Right,
year.
right.
So I'm doing a lot more. I'm sort of pushing back towards acting again, and I'm looking to do theater again, which
You know
I
what?
miss
I'm glad
terribly.
to hear both of that because
Yeah.
aside from everything else, you're a really lovely actor.
Oh, thank you,
A
Jason. I
really
appreciate
lovely
it.
actor, and you always were. I mean, you. There was a reason your career took off.
Thank you.
were
Can you
terrific.
sing anything for us? Just I want to. I
Absolutely
can't, I can't
not. My
imagine.
trainer would be so
I can't
mad at me
imagine what
if I
you
did
sound
that.
like. I've known you for a while. I've watched your stuff, but I can't.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. It's like Jason when we do live shows.
Yeah.
When Jason comes out and sings, the
Yeah.
audience is shocked that he can do what
Well,
he
they
does.
shouldn't
'cause
be.
they haven't
He's
seen
like a
it.
Broadway
I
star.
get it.
Why
He
would
won a
they be
Tony
shocked?
because most
They're
people
not
don't know
shocked.
that.
They're
Yeah.
not shocked. Peter is shocked. The audience is just the audience came going. We're going to go see Jason Alexander sing.
Right.
Peter
No,
is
I think when they come to see a show where there's not music. Where
But you
know,
also was guitar your
I
instrument?
played bass for years, yeah, but I
Bass.
don't anymore.
Yeah,
I had
I'm trying to
kids.
teach myself. Bass.
Yeah,
you
it's
give up
hard.
bass?
Peter brought me the bassist for the Rolling Stones.
Oh,
to
really? Oh,
teach
my
me, and
God.
that
Yeah,
was
he came in to
that
give.
was,
He gives. You want a lesson?
And I would be so intimidated by that.
Oh, he's
You
a
were
great-
intimidated?
I would be,
I
yeah.
didn't know what string was what.
Jason was so novice that it wasn't. He had the bass upside. Oh, you play left-handed? No, I don't. Is that it? What am I
yeah.
doing? All
The
right, let's
strings
go.
were facing me.
Let's go to Guggenheim for our what did we
Hello,
do
David.
wrong segment? What did we do right?
Hello.
Yes, David. Say hi to
You
Al.
guys did a heck of a job. You
Stop
did a
it.
heck of a
Finish
job
your
today. I got two potential things for you. I want to see what you're more interested in.
Okay.
Are you more interested in the top 50 videos that YouTube recommends? So these are not necessarily the biggest videos, but the ones that are most often recommended. Or are you interested in the all-time, busters, as billions and billions of views, the all-time watched videos?
Wow.
Alex, you pick.
I would vote for the latter just because I think the former's is kind of algorithmic. The latter kind of tells you what people are
Hold
genuinely.
on, Jason's got to answer his phone.
Okay.
It's a professional podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah,
you know what I would go for? Jason turning off his phone before we do the podcast. That would be. Is it an emergency? Was it an emergency?
Who knows?
Okay.
There's a strike.
So do the latter because our
All
guest.
right, well, I'll jump right to the number one because I think it's indicative of people's mentality. It's the baby shark dance.
That's right. Yeah.
Baby Shark Dance.
Which
That
has
would
been
make sense.
number
Okay.
one for a long time, I
Wow.
The
yes,
baby
yes.
shark dance.
think. Yeah.
Yeah. Now guess how many views?
500 million.
You're not even in the ball.
No, it's in the billions. It would be in the billions.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh my God, now I can't even find it. Where'd it go? Why is it not here? Hold on. It was just totally right.
You know what videos? My favorite on
I
YouTube.
got it. I'm
The
sorry,
ones
here
on
we go.
preparation are the ones that I
I
like
don't
the
know.
best.
It's just.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I
Go
got
ahead. Go ahead.
There you go. The ad project. Okay.
We'll edit it out.
Here it is. 13 billion views.
Yeah.
Of the baby shark
So
dance?
Alex, does that monetize to like a
13 billion.
fortune?
Yeah.
A fortune. Okay.
Sure.
All right. Oh my God.
Who put up the baby shark dance?
Somebody, who's very happy now.
Was it a
it's
parent?
called-
Was it a company? Was
It would have
it
been a company, surely. It would have been whoever.
So if we put up Baby Shark Dance 2 and
Yeah.
come up with something, that is a shot, right?
I don't know. I think it has to be. You have to have a license for whatever that content is, or so they will take it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why are we wasting our time?
You know what's funny?
Wasting our time.
Half the guests we have, and when they leave, you go, "Why are we wasting our time?" Like this is toxic. Like
The only guy I didn't want to emulate was the nude comic. Other than that,
everybody else has got it better than us.
What's the number 2 video?
That is, it seems to be it's called Despacio. It's a Latin-themed rap. It's sort of a lot of fusion of different elements.
Yeah, it shows you how global their audience
Right,
is, though.
right.
I mean, there's not just American people watching normal, and there's not just people watching Western.
But you know what, Alex, to that point, too, my wife said to me, I think we're going to see now. We can't remember this actor's name. I said, we watch more movies in a week than my parents saw in an entire lifetime.
That's right.
And half of the movies we're watching are South Korean or South American. I mean, it's
international.
fascinating that you get to see other cultures' humor, drama, how they shoot. It's wonderful.
It
And
is,
you know what's disturbing? A lot of them are better than ours.
I know, especially now.
I remember when
Yeah.
I watched Money Heist, La Casa de Papel on Netflix, and I went, this is better than any American
know.
drama series I've ever
Yeah.
seen in my life.
It's pretty good.
It's true. Yeah, the Israeli series. There's a lot of.
Oh my God,
just
Fauda.
do it.
To be- okay, it went out of my mind.
All right,
Oh
to be
my
fair,
God.
there's a lot of buddy crap on every culture.
is,
that's
of course. Yeah.
like you can't believe. So,
Sure.
David, you got a couple more?
I'll just throw a couple more at you. The big hits. Wheels on the Bus by Coco Melon.
Yes.
Never
You
goes
know.
Let me
away.
tell you, I
Never
think
goes
I've
away.
contributed to that one myself.
Never goes away.
Coco Melon is hot for people. That 5.42 billion
Sure.
for them. Let's see. You also have folks like Maroon 5, Katy Perry,
Beyonce, those big videos.
Shakira, Ed
Yep.
Sheeran.
Hey,
A lot of them.
hey, David, just for giggles, how many subscribers does the Really No Really podcast have?
Not enough.
And we're out. Alex, thanks for coming in.
Great to see you.
Then YouTube can kiss my ass.
Yeah, help us with that algorithm, would you please?